So as I said, last time we started translating, and now we're translating and solving equations. So when they say something like 18 more than the number n is 125, that could be easily translated ل 18 more than, يعني something plus 18 more than the number n, so it's n plus 18 is represents here equal 125. What's the value of n? I'll just start to solve the equation. So I'll move the 18 to the other side, and then n will be equals to 125 minus 18, which means n will be equals to 100 and how much? 7. Does this make sense? It's easy, صح? That's very similar to what we did again yesterday. When I say 20 is, again, remember that is means equal. So 20 is means 20 is equal. 7 less than something, so something minus 7. 7 less than what? Then twice the number w, so I'll put the 2w there. And then they're asking me, what's the value of w? So there's an equation right there, so I'll move the negative 7 to the other side, and I'll have 27 equals 2w, which means that w is equals to 27 divided by 2, and that means that w is equals to 13.5. You can write it as 13.5, or you can write it as 27 over 2 if this is a grid-in question, and that's not going to be the case in any of the ACT tests. Moving to number 3 right away. 9 less than twice x. Yes يا حبيبتي.
مستر هو امتى بتبقى to the power of حاجة؟
When they say to the power of أو يقولوا squared أو يقولوا cubed.
مش twice صح؟
لا twice يعني times.
Okay.
You're most welcome. Number 3 بيقول لي 9 less than twice x. So 9 less than something يعني حاجة minus 9 twice x, so 2 times x, is means equal 3 more than x, so x plus 3. What's the value of x? I'll move the x's on one side. I'll have 2x minus x equals 3 plus 9, which means x is equals to 12. That's it. Easy equation solved. In number 4, for example, they say 8 less than 4 times the number c is 20. So 8 less than something, so something minus 8. 8 less than what? 4 times the number c, so it's 4c, is means equals 20. And I'll start solving the equation, move this to the other side. 4c is equals to 28, and then c is equals to 7. Number 5 is when it starts to get a tiny bit harder. They say here the sum of 4 consecutive odd integers is whatsoever. So consecutive means after each other. In other words, or better words for that would mean in numbers that have the same difference between them. So for example, consecutive numbers could be 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. These are consecutive, or 72, 73, 74, or 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, and so on, because every one of those cases, the difference between the numbers is always the same. Sometimes they can tell you something like consecutive odd numbers. So what are the consecutive odd numbers? For example, they're 3, 5, 7, and so on. These are consecutive odd numbers. How can I represent them using letters and so on? So بقول لو أول واحد x اللي بعده اللي هو ال 5 هيبقى إيه؟ إزاي أوصل من 3 to 5? How do I get from 3 to 5? What was done from 3 to 5? I added 2. And then from 5 to 7, I added another 2. So it seems like we keep adding 2. So this means, and I can say that if the first term is x, The second one is x plus 2. And then the other one is x plus 4. And then the other one x plus 6, and so on. So when I say again consecutive odd numbers, if we want to represent them using letters, this is how I represent them. X plus 2, x plus 4. And the nice thing is, even the even numbers, they're 2, 4, 6, and 8, they are represented exactly the same way, because the difference between 2 and 4 is still 2, and between 4 and 6 is still 2. So if the first term is x, the next one is x plus 2, and the other one is x plus 4, and x plus 6, and so on. So if we're talking about even consecutive or odd consecutive, they're represented using this way. If we just say generally consecutive and that's it, just consecutive numbers, then I'll say if the first one is x, the next one is x plus 1, and the next one is x plus 2, and the next one is x plus 3, and so on. So if they just said consecutive, they mean that the difference is 1. But if they said odd consecutive or even consecutive, then we know that the difference is 2, which means the first one is x, x plus 2, and so on. How can this help me solving this question number 5? So the sum of 4 consecutive odd integers. We just said that the consecutive odd are supposed to be represented as x, and then the next one is x plus 1, and then x plus 2, and then there are 4 consecutive integers. Sorry, x plus 2, and x plus 4, and then the fourth one is x plus 6. So these are now a total of 4 numbers, consecutive odd numbers. They say that their sum is 296. So the sum means we add. So the sum of all of those 4 numbers means equals to 296. What is the greatest of the 4 consecutive integers? The greatest is this one. This is the biggest one. So I need to find the value of x and then substitute. How can I do so? I'll quickly add like terms together, x, x, and x, and x. These are 4 x's, and then 2 plus 4 plus 6, that's a total of 12 equals to 296. I'll move the 12 to the other side. 4x will be equals to 284. Then I'll move 4 to the other side by division. So x will be equals to 50, 21, so 71. I've got the value of x. Now what do they want? They want again the greatest of the 4 integers. So I have to find the x plus 6 actually, which is 71 plus 6, which means 77 is the correct final answer. Does this make sense? Are we good? Yes, I have.
بس هو أنا وقفت في حتة لما we added اللي هما الإكسز مع بعض والنمبرز مع بعض، وبعد كده أنا لغاية ال 71 ليه بقى وزودنا 6 تانية؟
عشان هو عايز ايه يا كرة؟ الاكس دي ايه؟ ريمبر ان احنا بنتكلم على 4 ارقام consecutive. الاكس دول ايه؟ الاكس دي اول رقم، واللي بعده x plus 2، واللي بعده x plus 4، واللي بعده x plus 6. مظبوط؟ So هو عايز the greatest out of those 4 numbers. مين ال greatest؟ مين اكبر واحد؟ الاكس plus 6. ما انا جبت اول رقم بكام؟ اول رقم 77، وهم 4 ارقام ورا بعض اكبر من بعض. So لو اول واحد 71 سوري، يبقى اللي بعده كام؟ 73، واللي بعده 74، واللي بعده لا سوري، اللي بعده 75 انا اسف، واللي بعده 77. So those are the 4 consecutive odd. يبقى اكبر واحد فيهم هو ده. انا بقى استغليت الموضوع ده عشان ما اقعدش اكتبهم كلهم، ان انا I substituted على طول في اكبر واحد. This is what we call the greatest. مظبوط؟ Sure? طيب يلا. Most welcome. Another good example for that, they say the sum This is not about the consecutive thing, but another good example of an equation. يعني the sum of 3/4 of a number. 3/4 means 3/4. So the sum of 3/4 of a number A, يعني 3/4 of A, and 24, يعني plus 24, is -9. So that's equals to -9. I need to find the value of A. I'll move the 24 to the other side. So 3/4A is now equals to -33. I'll then move the 4 to the other side by multiplication. I'll move then the 3 to the other side by division. So A will be equals to -33 times 4 divided by 3, which means A is equals to -44. And that was an easy one, صح?
Oh, yes.
طيب. Let's try out على طول the chapter test. So chapter 2 practice test. This one has equations with fractions. They have equations where we need to translate them and solve them. We have equations the same thing, creating our own equation using the words stated here. Again, creating equations. So it's all about what we just discussed, but mainly they're supposed to be a bit more difficult questions, and they start by easy ones and getting harder till the end. At the very end, there are 2-word problems there where we apply again and we still solve the equations. They're pretty easy if we just try to understand the words. That's it. As we just saw, a total of 11 questions, but I would give you for all 11 questions 10 minutes because they don't require more than 10 minutes. And hopefully once we're done with that, we'll move to على طول the parts of the test that I just showed you at the beginning. So 10 minutes for chapter 2, practice test, starting now. Of course, the first one is a pretty easy one. This is just a simple equation. So we can just move this fraction to the other side by division. Which means that x will be equals to 4/5. But instead of dividing by 5/6, I'll multiply and I'll flip the fraction, 6/5. That means that x will be equals to 24/25, which is C. This was a very easy one. Once we move to number 2, the translation occurs when 1/2 of the number n, so half n, is decreased by 4, the result is -6. What's 3 times n added to 7? So I'll find first n, and I'll move this -4 to the other side, so half n will be equals to -6 plus 4, which means that half n will be equals to -2. I'll move the half to the other side, and as I said, I'll flip it, which means n will be equals to -4. Once I have the value of n, I can substitute it into there to find 3 times n added to 7. So that's 3 multiplied by -4 plus 7, which is -12 plus 7, which is -5. Which means B is the correct answer. I think this one برضه was clear and organized and to the point, صح? Now if we check number 3, 4 minus 7x is means equal. So 4 minus 7x is equal 5 less than 23, which means 23 minus 5. So now 4 minus 7x equals to 17. Sorry, 18. 4x will move, will move to the other side. So -7x will be equals to 14. -7 will move to the other side by division. So x will be equals to -2. What is the value of 3x? That's 3 times negative 2, which means the answer is negative 6. This is your final answer, C. Yes, يا حبيبي.
مثلا هو أنا لما عملتها الإكس طلعت ب 2 مش نيجاتيف 2 لأن أنا عملت نيجاتيف 14 divided by نيجاتيف 7
ليه نيجاتيف 14؟
عشان كانت
عملتي
نيجاتيف
5
7.
عشان عملتي 5 minus 23 ولا عشان ايه؟
أنا عملت 23 minus 4 الأول.
لا 23 minus 5 الأول.
عملتها minus 4 عشان يعني أجمعهم الأول.
لا هو أول حاجة قالها هنا 5 less than 23، فقمت أنا كاتب 23 minus 5. بعد كده ابتديت أحل الإيكويشن 23 minus 5 ب 18. لما ابتدي أطلع الإكس هموف اللي بعيد عن الإكس اللي هي ال 4 to the other side الأول by subtraction. So لما تروح الناحية التانية هتبقى 18 minus 4 which is 14 مش negative 14 صح؟
اوكي.
وبعدين النيجاتيف دي لما تروح الناحية التانية نيجاتيف 7 هي already times فتروح الناحية التانية divided بس تفضل بنفس الساين. ف 14 divided negative 7 تبقى negative 2. We're good?
اوكي. thank you.
Most welcome. Number 4, this is a word problem and we said إن أهم حاجة في word problems is to understand what each letter represents. And you can tell here once you start reading that P is the pressure, and this pressure depends on the initial force. So the initial force is just F, and then the speed of the fluid is V. Which of the following expresses the square of the velocity in terms of whatsoever? So the square of the velocity is clearly V squared. I need V squared in terms of everything. How can I get V squared in terms of, and I talked to you about this before, in terms of يعني عايز V squared completely alone on one side equals to everything else. How can I do so? So I'll write the equation over here and then I'll start the distribution process and so on. Now there's more than one way we can go through this. You can actually move the F first to the other side right away by division. So I'll have P over F equals half V squared plus 1. And then move the positive 1 to the other side by subtraction. So P over F minus 1 equals to half V squared. But then when you notice the steps of, or when you notice the choices, sorry, you can tell right away that there's no case where it's just P over F minus 1. They have them in one fraction. What does that mean? Now, let me try and show you. First, we need to move this half to the other side. So if you moved it to the other side, it should go by multiplication as 2. فالمفروض تبقى 2 multiplied by P over F minus 1 equals to V to the power of 2. And again, when you look at the choices, there's no such case because C is where the 2 is just multiplied by the fraction, but not multiplied by the negative 1. So it's not right. And then A and B, they don't have P over F in them. So it could be D right away. Or if you just try to actually make these two fractions equal or add them into one simple fraction, you'll put the 2 as it is, you leave the P over F as it is, but instead of 1, I'll make it F over F عشان يبقوا نفس denominator. So هزود F تحت فوق وتحت. This is now equals to V squared. Once we do that, you can tell that you'll subtract اللي فوق. So P minus F is over F and equals to V squared. So it's definitely D the right one. That's one way. The other way, which I prefer even better, is that from the beginning, if you distributed the F, you'll have P equals F over 2 V squared plus F, because F times half is F over 2. Now, as we said, we need V squared completely alone. So I'll move the F to the other side. I'll have P minus F equals f over 2 v squared. I'll move the 2 to the other side by multiplication. So p minus f multiplied by 2 equals to v squared, equals to f v squared. And then I'll move the f to the other side by division. So 2 times p minus f over f equals to v squared. So it gets you to the same answer. Does those both ways make sense to you? And you can tell once, or if by any chance you did follow this longer method, how to correct and make sure that your answer is the right one? Everyone, are we good? Hello? I got it, but this is kind of confusing. Okay. So you see, Bira, the confusing thing about it is that I tried to show you guys, if you already tried or if you already did this way of moving the f to the other side, it will get you to an answer that's not there. So how can you correct your answer and make sure that it's similar to the choices? That's the confusing part, I think. But if you did not follow this long method from the beginning, and you decided to actually just distribute the f, which makes, by the way, a bit more sense. Yani we're used to distributing whenever we have something outside of a bracket. So what makes more sense a bit is to distribute the f. And once you do that and distribute the f, it's just a simple equation. We're trying to put v squared completely on one side of the equation. So if you followed this other method, the red one, I think it's a much easier and to the point one. But if you followed the blue one, you should still know how to make the choice, or how to get to the correct choice. Does this make sense? Would you like me to repeat it better though? I don't mind if you want that. No, okay. Yeah, I get it. I get it. It's fine. Now, if you check number 5, it says here 1/2 of the number n, so half n, is increased by 10, so plus 10, is the same as, that means equal, 4 less than, so something minus 4, twice the number x, 2x. See, literal translation. So again, 1/2, that's just half of the number of, yani then times the number n is just an n increased by, which means plus 10 is the same as, that means equal. And then 4 less, so 4, and then less than, so something minus 4, twice the number x. So that's the part we discussed earlier. And I used a different letter here. I should have used still an n. Now let's look at the choices. The choices should be clearly given to you this way, and that's it. So you don't even here need to solve and find the value of n. You just need to express the correct equation. If you check number 6, A is, so A equals, B less than, so something minus B. B less than what? 1/2 of C, so half C. What is B in terms of A and C, which means I need B completely alone on one side and positive. Here's what I'm going to do. I'll move the negative B to this side and I'll move the A to the other side. So that negative B تبقى positive B وال A تبقى الناحية التانية negative A. Now A is completely alone and equals, sorry, B is completely alone and equals to everything else. So this is your answer. Half C minus A. Does this make sense? Moving on to 7. X equals 1 minus y, and then 3x is equals to this. What's the value of x? I would easily remove this x and substitute 1 minus I, because they said that x is equals to 1 minus y. So I'll just remove the x and put 1 minus y equals to 8 minus 5y. Now I have an equation I can solve to find the value of x. So it's 3 minus 3y by distribution equals to 8 minus 5y. I'll move the y's on one side and the numbers on the other side. So I'll have positive 5y minus 3y equals to 8 minus 3. That's 2y equals to 5, which means y is equals to 5 over 2. What they want is the value of x. So I just need to substitute this y into this equation here. I'll say that x is now equals to 1 minus 5 over 2. In order to subtract those without a calculator, I have to change the 1 to become the same denominator. So I'll add 2 تحت و 2 فوق, which then will become 2 over 2 minus 5 over 2. I can then subtract, so 2 minus 5, that's negative 3 over 2. The answer is negative 3 over 2. I think that makes sense, right? There's one more thing that I have to say here. Because we needed the value of x, not the y, I could have done something differently. I could have replaced the y. Yani I could have solved for y first. I could move the y to the other side, so it's positive y, and then move the x to the other side equals to 1 minus x. And now instead of this y, I can put the 1 minus x right away. So 3x will now be equals to 8 minus 5 multiplied by 1 minus x. The 3x will remain the same, the 8 will remain the same, but the negative 5 will be distributed, which will give me negative 5 plus 5x. Now 3x is then equals to 3 plus 5x. I'll move the x's on one side and the numbers on the other side, so negative 3 equals to 5x minus 3x, which means negative 3 is equals to 2x, and then move the 2 to the other side, so negative 3 over 2. This way, I'm getting the x value right away without the need of getting y and then substituting. They're both okay. I just want you to be able to accept both perspectives, that's all, and see them both. Are we good? Awesome. Moving to number 8, the quotient of a number and 5. The quotient, we said that means division. So when they say the quotient of a number and 5, that means a number, let's say an x, for example, divided by 5 is equals to 9 less than something, so something minus 9, 9 less than 1/2 the number, so half x. What is the value of the number? عايز أعرف الx بكام. Now, I will put the x's on one side and the numbers on the other side. So I'll move this half x to the other side. I have now x over 5 minus half x equals to negative 9. The half x is the same as x over 2. So now in order to subtract these two, I have to have the same denominators. So I'll multiply by 2 here up and down, and I'll multiply by 5 here up and down. That would get me 2x minus 5x over 10 equals negative 9. I'll move the 10 to the other side and I'll add these two, so that would give me negative 3x equals to negative 90. I'll move the negative 3 to the other side by division, so that's positive 30. So the x is equals to 30, because they asked what's the number itself. Are we good here? Yes يا حبيبي.
بص هو احنا لو كنا خلينا ان هي تبقى زي الأول اللي هو x over 5 equals 1 over 2x وعملنا cross multiplication كانت هتنفع؟
عشان لو ما كانش فيه minus 9 كانت هتنفع، بس عشان هما مش fractions بس equals بعد ده fraction والناحية التانية fraction جنبه رقم بالبلس أو بالماينس، يبقى ما ينفعش أعمل cross multiplication. يعني لو أنا عندي again fraction أهو a over b equals c over d ينفع أعمل cross multiply، بس لو قال لي a over b equals c over d plus مثلا x ما ينفعش أعمل cross multiplication.
اوكي
وهو ده اللي حصل هنا، فاهمة؟
Thank you.
Most welcome. Number 9 is a very interesting question. It says here a over b equals to 1. What's the value of a minus b? You can think about it mentally. If two numbers are divided by each other and they're equals to 1, it means they're exactly the same number. So, for example, 5 divided by 5 is 1. There's no such thing that two numbers would be divided by each other and give me 1, except if both are equal to each other. So if a over b is equals to 1, it means that a and b are the same number. So what happens when I divide them? The answer would be 0. That's one way to look at it. Algebraically, though, we can say that if a over b is equals to 1, you can move b to the other side, and then a will be equals to 1 times b, which means b. If a is equals to b, I can substitute and put instead of this b, the a. So then a minus a will definitely be equals to 0. Same way. So algebraically, it makes sense. And mentally, algebra should always make sense. Number 10, when an object is thrown from the ground into the air with an initial upward speed of v0. So the v0 is the initial upward speed. The speed v, so that's the normal speed, is given by the equation this. So you have an equation where v is the speed, but v0 is the initial upward speed. T is the time. The speed of an object becomes 0. What's the speed? The v is the speed. The speed of the object becomes 0 when the object reaches its maximum height. If an object is thrown upward with an initial speed, so the word initial speed is repeated again, of 14 meters per second, how many seconds does it take? For an object to reach its maximum height? How can we solve this? So we just need to understand, as I said, every letter and what does it mean. If they said that this v0 means the initial upward speed, and then they said there's an initial upward speed of 14, I'll substitute v0 with 14. And then I'll keep reading. They said they wanted to reach its maximum height. And up here, they said to reach its maximum height, the speed must be equals to 0. And I know that the speed is represented here by v. So instead of the v, I'll put 0. Now they need to know how many seconds, which means they need to know the t value. So I'll just move the 14 to the other side. And then I'll move the negative 9.8 to the other side by division. So t will be equals to negative 14 divided by negative 9.8. T will be equals to 1.428, and they said round your answer to the nearest hundredth. So it means I should stop at this number here, which means that t is now actually equals to 1.43. This is how you're supposed to write your final answer. Does this make sense, everyone? I think it's easy, right? The concept is very important concept. Number 11, when an object is dropped from a height of s feet above the ground, the height h of an object is given by this equation, where t is the time in seconds after the object has dropped. If an object is dropped from a height of 144, how many seconds will it take to hit the ground? So again, you need to understand what every letter represents. S represents the height where the object was dropped. And they said here that if an object is dropped from a height of 144, so apparently this S is equals to 144. They want to know after how many seconds will it hit the ground. That's a part where it requires a bit of thinking. If something hits the ground, then what's the height of that object at the time? 0. It is already on the ground. So then when they say that something hits the ground, this means that the height, which is here h, it's already equals to 0. So in this case, I just need to put, instead of the h, 0. And try to solve this equation, to find the value of t. I'll move the 144 to the other side, so negative 144 is now equals to negative 16t squared. I'll move the negative 16 to the other side, so t squared is equals to 144 divided by 16, because the negatives will cross each other. And then square root that answer to get you your final answer in as seconds. That's 4.8989. So if I'm going to still try to approximate this, I should put it as 4.9 right away. Does this make sense? Are we good? The answer was 3. Yeah, let me check it now. It's stupid. So 144 divided by 16. Oh, I'm sorry. That's a calculator mistake. I'm sorry. I did this on a calculator right away. I'm very sorry. Because if you can tell here, it was supposed to be divided by 16 and I wrote it as divided by 6. It's actually divided by 16. So it's yes, 3. صح. You're right. So it's actually root 9. And 144 over 16 is 9. So then root 9 is equals to 3. So t is equals to 3 seconds. Correct. Are we good? Perfect. Thank you, Bella. This was awesome. طيب, what should we go for next? I've added this new form here. It's the last 5 questions of June 2016 test. These are like, they're not hard, they're just like big questions somehow. Every one of those questions requires like few steps. They're not just done in one step and that's all, okay? I'd like us to work on those today now, because they're very different than what we just did, and I like always to change every now and then. I don't want you to get used to a pattern, because that's what happens in the test. There's no pattern. It always gets harder at the end. Yes, that's true, but then there's no pattern in how the topics move from one question to the next one. And I also honestly like to increase the rigorousness, if possible, of the questions that we do here in class. So let's try and see how what are we going to do in these 5 questions now. and we'll discuss them after we're done. These are 5, as I said, but I'll give you 10 minutes to solve them. And that's, of course, more than the time actually given in the actual test. But I want you to take your time thinking about every one of them. At least you should get somewhere in the steps, even if you didn't get the final answer. Yes, ya حبيبتي.
Is it which one?
You'll find a form at the very end called P12 ACT June 2016.
مفيش.
Just refresh it كده بس.
مفيش.
You see هنا P12 ACT تحت الexit ticket كمان. Okay, so apparently these were much harder than we thought. I'll discuss every one of those with you, but I wanted to know your thoughts and what kinds of problems you faced in every one of those. So if you wouldn't mind quickly sharing with me, like, what were your problems in this question? Like, what did you understand and what did you not understand, and so on. So first of all, what's the radian measure? We learned earlier that in order to move from degrees to radians, and these are both ways of units of measuring angles. So let's say I have 30 degrees and I want to change that to radians. I should multiply by pi over 180. That should get me the answer in radians. So it's pi over 6. That's pi over 6 radians. So 30 degrees is equivalent to pi over 6. But this is a unit and this is another unit of measurement. But if it's the other way around, like if I already know the radians, let's say it's pi over 4, and I want to know how many degrees is this equals to, I will multiply by 180 over pi. So that will get you 45 degrees. One more thing to understand about the radians and the degrees is that the radians is a measure of the angles, but that uses the fact, or that uses the idea that pi is equivalent to 180 degrees. That's what they're using in the idea of radians. So, for example, if I'm talking about an XY axis like this one, this is a 90 degrees. We start from 0. This would be considered 90 degrees. In radians, it would be considered pi over 2. نص ال 180, so نص ال pi. This one is 180 degrees, which is equivalent to pi in radians. This one is 270 degrees, which is equivalent to 3 over 4 pi in radians. And this one is 360 degrees again, yani when you complete a full circle, which is equivalent to 2 pi in radians. So if they say something like this, pi minus theta, in radians, pi minus theta, they mean, or they're talking about it's like 180 minus the theta. So they're talking about this angle. This angle is the angle that is represented by pi minus theta. Does this make sense or not? Before we continue with the rest here. Theta is the angle. It's just the measure of an angle. We don't know what is it. It's a symbol that represents the angle. That's all. The measure of the angle. Okay. Emily, you're good. Carla, you're good.
Yes, yes.
Right. So think about this. They want to know that this is what we call the terminal side, by the way. The end of the angle, the side that ends the angle. This is what we call the terminal side. Right now, this is the terminal side of theta. What would be, where would be the terminal side of this angle? Pi minus theta. So whatever it is, let's assume, for example, this is an assumption, that this is 30 degrees. Then this remaining angle would be equivalent to 150 degrees. What they're trying to ask you now is what would be a point on the terminal side of the angle 150. That's what they're trying to ask you. Which of these points would be a point on the terminal side, which is this side, of the angle pi minus theta, which is the remaining of this angle, which is this 150. So where would that point be? If I have these points now as R and S, then the new terminal side would be exactly the reflection of this one. Yani it would be over here somewhere. Which means that the y coordinate would be exactly the same. It's the same S. But the x coordinate has changed its sign. Here, this point was r and 0. There, this point would be negative r and 0. So that means that the point on the terminal side of the pi minus theta angle would be negative r on the x, but positive s as it is on the y. Does that kind of make sense?
لا.
Ask, please, any of you. You just need to ask me as many questions as possible.
أنا مش فاهمة الحتة اللي في الآخر with like the dotted red line.
Okay.
But other than that, kind of.
Okay, so فاهمة in what we're talking about is the angle that's called, that's like the remaining of 180, right?
Yeah, دي فاهمة.
Okay. So فاهمة, and if we assume that theta is 30 degrees, the angle that they're talking about would be 150 degrees, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Whenever we're trying to graph or to put an angle on an xy axis, we should always start from this side here.
Okay.
Okay. So if I want to graph the angle called 150, I should start from here, and I'll go from here to there, that's 90 degrees, and I'll continue a bit more until I reach the 150, right?
Okay.
That would be a 150 degree angle. So the side that they're talking about, the terminal side of the angle pi minus theta, that's this terminal side that they mean, صح?
Mm-hmm.
Sure?
Yeah, okay.
Okay. So they want to know which of the following points could be on that terminal side. I know for a fact that there's a point here, which is this point. It has an x coordinate of r and a y coordinate of s, right? So that point is r and s.
Yeah.
Now this other one here would be the exact reflection of it. It's like the same y values is shared between them. So this one would have still s as the y, right? But then what's the x coordinate? If this is positive r, then on this side it would be negative r, right?
Yeah.
So then this point on the terminal side could be negative r and s.
Yeah, okay. I found my head to the
Type one more, another idea. You get the fact that the terminal side should be on the left, right?
Yeah, so it's going opposite to the x-axis.
Yes. So what we're 100% sure that this is a point on in the right, in the left coordinate, quadrant. So this is what we call quadrant 1, and this is what we call quadrant 2. We know that the point R and S is in quadrant 1. So which point could be definitely in quadrant 2? The one that has the negative R and a positive S. That's definitely in quadrant 2 with no thought about it.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so it's another way of looking at it. And if you don't know how to like actually what happened exactly.
Yeah, okay, I understood. شكرا.
العفو. قرأ بتر شوية ولا لا؟
ممكن هو أنا مصوتة بس هو يعني ازاي quadrant 2 و quadrant 3 الاتنين فيهم negative R والتاني يعني الحاجة التانية positive.
لا كوادرنت 3 اللي هو ده كوادرنت 3. لا ده كان هتبقى الاس عليه نيجاتيف برضه. ما هي لو البوزيتيف اس هنا على الواي يبقى تحت هنا نيجاتيف اس، فالبوينت اللي هنا هتبقى نيجاتيف ار ونيجاتيف اس. So it's different than quadrant 2 اللي هي نيجاتيف ار واس.
اوكي بس ازاي quadrant 4 الاتنين positive او لا مش
لا
عارفة
كوادرنت
positive
4
تقريبا.
يا حبيبتي حطي بوينت اهو كوادرنت اهو كوادرنت 4 حطي بوينت هنا. دي بوزيتيف ار ودي نيجاتيف اس. سو البوينت دي ايه الكوردينيت بتاعتها؟ ار on the x and negative s on the y. This one تبقى r ونيجاتيف s. This one تبقى r وبوزيتيف s. This one negative r و s و this one negative r ونيجاتيف s. فاهمة؟ شور؟
ماشي thank you.
Most welcome. Emily and Bella, how is it? Okay. Perfect. Now let's try by the 57 one. This is about the matrices. Now in matrices, when we multiply, I told you that we multiply the rows with the columns. So we'll start with the rows first and then multiply by the columns. I have here 2, negative 5, negative 3, and 4. And I'm supposed to multiply that by the 2 and the negative 1. So we'll start again with this row multiplied by this column. So we took a row, the upper row with the first column. The answer should be in the first column, the upper number. So the answer should be up here in the first column. 2 times 2 plus negative 5 times negative 1. That's when we multiply this row with this column, the whole answer is just one number. Now, if I want to go to get the number اللي تحته, the lower number, I'll take the second row with still the first column. So negative 3 multiplied by 2 plus 4 multiplied by negative 1. Are there any other columns? No, there are no more columns. So my answer will have only one column. That's all. I'll just calculate those. 2 times 2, that's 4. 4 plus 5, that's 9. And then negative 3 times 2, negative 6. Negative 6 plus negative 4, that's negative 10. So it's 9 over negative 10, which is E right away. So again, the idea here is that we take the rows with the columns. If I have, how do I know my answer would have how many rows and columns? The answer would have the same number of rows of the first matrix and the same number of columns of the second matrix. So the first matrix had 2 rows. The second matrix had 1 column, which means that the answer would have 2 rows and 1 column as well. Does this make sense? And that's why there are 2 numbers, but in 1 row, in 1 column. Makes sense, everyone? Yara and Carla, we're good?
كويس.
58. In the figure below, BC is parallel to مش عارف مين. E is the midpoint of AB. So this E is the midpoint of AB, which means that this region, EB, is equals to this region, EA. F is the midpoint of CD, so the same thing is happening here. This is equivalent to this. H is the midpoint of that, so this is equals to this, and then this is equals to this. What is the length of GH? GH is this one here. So we'll work this one out step by step a bit. There are similar shapes and so on. I'm sorry, I just saw the message. Okay, I got it, ya habibi. But I just want you to remember regarding the matrices thing is that we always start with rows and then columns. You just remember that. That would organize the thought when you're trying to multiply, and also it would organize the thought when you're trying to actually give dimensions, or to know the dimensions of any of those ones. Remember also that we decide we decide where or in which row the answer would be based on the position of the position of the row that we took from the first matrix, and we decide which column the answer would be based on the column we took from the second Bardo matrix. So as I just said, rows comes first and then columns. If you keep that in mind, this should organize how this works. Getting back to this one. So as I said, this is a similar one, but the similarity here works a bit different because they're not all similar to each other in a way. What we're talking about is so I want you to look at how can I highlight this for you? Okay, so this whole big shape all together الأول. And compare it to this one. So these two, when you compare them to each other, these are similar ones. We can say that oh no, no, I can't. This isn't how you're going to get it though. So okay, look at keep looking at the same big pictures, big shapes. Okay, this side, the smaller side here, or actually, yeah, okay, this side here, let's say this is x. So this one would be x as well, which means that this whole side would be 2x. So there is a similarity here that states no. This would confuse you even more. No. No, just a second. If let's say this is 10 and this is 20, and I have a new line here that's constructed from the midpoints of each of those sides. So this is a midpoint and this is a midpoint as well. And then there's a line that was created here from the midpoints of these two sides. And this line is parallel to these two. If you want to know the measure of this middle sign, it's like the midpoint between these two. It's the number exactly in the middle between these two. So in order to do that, it's like you're getting the midpoint of these two. So it's 10 plus 20 over 2. That means that the length of this side اللي في النص is 15. So does this theory here make sense to you guys? So if we're talking about this one and this one, and here the EF is what's connecting between the two midpoints, which means that this side plus this side that I don't know over 2 should give me this middle number. 12 plus the other side, which is x, over 2 should give me the measure of the middle side here, which is the 25. So if I move this 2 to the other side, I'll be able to get the value of x and say that this middle one is supposed to be equals to 50 minus 12, that's what, 38. So that's the measure of x. This x here is 38. Is that correct? 38 plus 12. Did I calculate that right? Yeah. So 12 plus 38 is 25. But that, if that one is 38, no, that wouldn't. Okay. Type. So now I got this one is 38 and this one is 25. Now, where did the 50 come from? Okay, better I got this equation. Do you get how I got this equation here? X plus 12 over 2 equals to 25. Okay, now I'll move the 2 to the other side by multiplication. So then x plus 12 will be equals to 50, 2 times 25. And then move the 12 to the other side, so x will be equals to 38. So the measure of this side here, that's 38. Now I want to do the same thing, but now for these two sides. This one I have the measure of, and this one, and I have the measure of, which is 38, and I want to get the middle side now. Let's call it y. So then I'm supposed to put 25 plus 38 over 2. That should get me the measure of the side in the middle, which is y. 25 plus 38, that's 63 over 2. So then y is equals to 31.5, which is g in this case. Does this make sense? Everyone, does this make sense? Yara and Corda, are we good? Yara, I know you don't like geometry, but is this okay? It's like the ideas of just midpoints and that's all.
بس أنا عندي حاجة تانية.
ايه يا حبيبي؟
أنا جبت 38 دي بس بطريقة تانية.
اللي تحت قولي لي ازاي؟
عملت ايه 25 minus 12 وبعد كده زودت
الفرق.
زودت الفرق
هو
38.
هو هنا على فكرة نفس نفس الكونسبت، بس انت فكرتي فيها، انا ما فكرتش، انا خليتها ايكويشنز، فاهمة الفرق؟ بس هي نفس الكونسبت صح؟
اوكي
بيرفكت يعني.
ماشي اوكي.
طيب نوصل كده حاجة. يا رب بصي يا عمار، أنا بس عايز افهمك الفكرة دي. انا لو عندي مثلا اي shape بالمنظر ده if I know the measure of this and I know the measure of this وعايز اجيب السايد اللي في النص، المفروض ان انا اعمل a plus b over 2. this would give me السايد اللي في النص. ف I use مرة السايد اليلو ده with this one المفروض to get the one in the middle. So هعمل 12 plus x لان انا ما اعرفش ده بكام over 2. المفروض يديني the one in the middle which is 25, and that's how we got the 38. So now I have the side ده بكام. Then I'll do the same process but for these. I'll say now السايد ده along with السايد ده المفروض plus بعض over 2 يدوني السايد اللي في النص ده. That's what we actually want. So عملت ال 25 مع 38 plus بعض over 2, and that's how I got the 31.5. Makes sense يا يارا شوية؟
Yeah, it makes sense. Well, I can memorize the formula, but I have to process where to use it. بس غير كده yeah, it makes sense.
So بس هي الفرق إن إحنا we substituted the givens in the formula that's like the midpoint formula. This one is called the a plus b over 2. A plus B over 2, or adding any two terms and then divided by 2 will get me the exact number in the middle. Yes يا حبيبي.
بص معلش هو سؤال غبي شوية بس أنا فاهمة في كل حاجة لغاية حتة 25 plus 38 بس أنا مش عارفة هو ليه إحنا عملناها over 2.
نفس الثيري دي حالا اللي هي كارل اهي، عشان أنا لو عندي السايد ده والسايد ده وعايز أجيب اللي في النص هعمل ده بلس ده over 2. عملت اهو ده ال 25 اللي هنا بلس ال 38 اللي تحت over 2 عشان أجيب اللي في النص.
اوكي ماشي.
فاهمة؟
خلاص. اوكي ثانك
most welcome. 59. Suppose that A will be a randomly selected number from this set and B will be a randomly selected number from this set. What's the probability that A times B is bigger than 0? I told you before that whenever we see something that's bigger than 0, we just think about it in terms of is it positive or negative. They just want to tell you whether it's positive or negative, that's all. So when they tell you that A times B is bigger than 0, it means it must be a positive number, but it can't be a negative one. They want the probability that when I take any number from the first set and with another number from the second set, and I multiply them, the answer will remain positive. So what do I know about the probability? The probability is supposed to be the wanted over the total. And the wanted is in this case, for the numbers to be multiplied and would give me positive numbers. So هشوف how many numbers أو how many different cases ممكن آخد number من set A ونمبر من set B وأعملهم times بعض ويطلع لي positive. So if you look at set A, any negative number from set A with any other negative number from set B would give me a positive result. يعني لو جات لي من هنا negative 3 مع negative 2, that would be a positive result. أو لو خدت negative 3 مع negative 1, that's still a positive result. So far 2 positive results. ممكن كمان اخد negative 2 multiplied by negative 2, so that's 1. Or negative 2 multiplied by negative 1, so that's another 2. ممكن اخد negative 1 multiplied by negative 2, which would be positive. ممكن اخد negative 1 multiplied by negative 1, which would be برضو another positive number, so another 2. So a total of 6 cases so far من النيجاتيفز بس positive. ممكن كمان اخد اي number 1 multiplied by 1, and that's one more case. So far 7 cases هيطلع لي فيهم positive. So the wanted for it to be positive, that's 7 cases. Over how many possible option ممكن يجي أصلا? What is the total? There are two numbers that we're going to select, either A or B. From A, how many possible options are there in set A? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers. How many possible choices from set B? 1, 2, 3, 4 options. Multiply those by each other, and that would get you the total possible combinations that could come out. So this is my total. This is what should be taken here. So the probability is 7 over 20. D. This is confusing, صح? We should repeat it again, right?
please.
طيب. We can repeat it with a different كمان method والله تانية, and you'll like it a bit better. You remember something called the fundamental counting principle? I discussed this with you before. Counting principle.
بس في حد بعت حضرتك حاجة.
What if there are 100 numbers? Would I count all? That's exactly the reason why I'm telling you this. Counting principle. There's a way of counting the numbers. So how do I count that? I check the possible options. So, for example, if I want to know I want A times B to be positive. So look at this. How many positions do I have? I have two spaces, not positions. I have two spaces, one for A and one for B. Now, how many possible number from A, negative number from A, and how many possible negative number from B? Because I know that if I multiplied a negative number by a negative number, the answer will be positive. So I'll check how many negative options are there in set A. There's 1, 2, 3 options. So put 3 here. Now, how many possible options from set B? There's 1, 2 negative numbers, so 2. If you multiplied those, this would get you the number of possible answers that could come out. So I have here 6 positive answers that could come out of just the negative numbers. Then I can do that one more time and say, I have also this one multiplied by this one, and that's one more case. So a total of 7 positive possibilities. Then in order to calculate the total, how many different possible answers could be there, you'll say again, I have 2 spaces, and I don't care if they're positive or negative. So how many possible options in set A? How many numbers are there? There are just 5 numbers. How many possible numbers in set B? There are just 4 numbers. And if you multiply those, this is 20 possible option that could come out, whether positive or negative or zero or whatsoever. So the probability, or what do they want? They want the probability of a positive product. So they wanted is the positive product, which is 7, over the total, which is 20. So 7 over 20, that's the probability, D. Does this make a better sense شوية or not at all? And better, does this answer your question on how to count if you have 100 numbers? Like, any questions in this one? Emily, are we good? Yara, are we good?
I'm good.
Carla? I'm good as in I don't want to talk about this anymore, eh?
No, I'm good.
طيب. Finally,
أنا مستحيل.
yeah, برضه دي I don't want to talk about this anymore. I got confused a lot. That's why I made a mistake. No worries. I mean, the important thing is that you get the concept, and that's all. It's fine. Sometimes we're confused. You can tell I've been confused, but today it's not that I'm 100% there. Anyway, we'll see. Number 60, finally, distinct points A, B, C, and D are collinear. B is between A and C. So you're told that there's A, B, and C. There's a line that has points on it, A, B, and C, and D. And you're told that B is between A and C, and D is between A and C. بس لسه هنشوف ايه الحوار ده. So I have apparently A, C, and B is somewhere between them. This doesn't mean that it has to be in the middle. It's between them وخلاص. But then they said that D is between A and C, so that AD plus DB plus BC is equals to AC. So if I say that AD plus DB plus BC is equals to AC, it means that D is here. It's somewhere in the middle. That's the only case where AD plus DB plus BC will be equals to AC, the whole thing together. Now, let's try to read through this. Which of the following must be true? Does this mean that AD is equals to DB? No. It doesn't mean that this has to be equals to this. That's not true. These could be anywhere. The point D could be here. It's fine. Then AD plus DB plus BC would still be equals to AC, no matter what. Is AD equals to BC? AD equals to BC? Still not true. We don't know. That's not 100% true. Is B between D and C? Yes, that's true. That's what 100% showed up. Is D between B and C? No, apparently it's not. D is outside somewhere here. So the only possible answer is just 3. G is the correct answer. Makes sense? Yes, يا حبيبي.